I did that in the University of Koblenz-Landau in Germany, as you said, as a dual degree program between the University of Rwanda and the University of Koblenz-Landau. The topic was the role of the riparian zone ecosystem in climate change resilience of communities around Lake Kibare, Rwanda. First of all, let us understand what is ecosystem-based adaptation. As defined by the Convention on Biological Diversity, EBA is the use of biodiversity and ecosystem services to help people adapt to adverse effects of climate change. And EBA was conceived because scientists and policymakers think that healthy ecosystems provide valuable ecosystem services, including food, clean water, and protection of diseases, cultural services, floods control, and erosion control. Another thing is that healthy and functioning ecosystems are more resilient to climate change, and they are able to support adaptation to different impacts of climate change. Lastly, EBA highlights the link between climate change, biodiversity, and sustainable resource management by preserving and enhancing ecosystems, and it enables societies to better mitigate and adapt to climate change. Specifically in my study area, the problem which is mostly there is drought. This area receive little rainfall per year, and some years may even pass without rain, and some other years they may have long rainy season than normal. That's why this part of Rwanda is mostly affected by drought. Another thing is flood, and you can wonder why drought and then floods. Floods which are occurring in that place are not necessarily from the region, because, for example, if the rain came in the northern province and the southern province of Rwanda, all the waters goes into the Akagera River, and the Akagera is flooded. When it is flooded, it dumps its overflow into the lake, and the water increases in that way that it destroys different crops in people's land. Like this picture, you can see that this bamboo is planted in the riparian zone, and you can see that water reached far above the riparian zone, or in some meters behind the riparian zone. Another thing which is very important to mention in the area is that this area don't have enough water, therefore they depend on lake water for different household activities, including drinking, washing clothes, and also, of course, they depend on this water for agricultural activities. And then, after realizing that the riparian zone of the Lake Kibare has been degraded, and if it is restored, it can contribute to people's resilience to climate change, REMA did a set of activities. Number one is relocating the market, which was taking place in the riparian zone. Another thing which was done is the marketing the boundaries of the riparian zone. REMA dug trenches which separate the riparian zone and the people's land. And here I am using the word riparian zone to mean that land below 50 meters from the lake edge, and that area is calculated from exactly at the edge of the lake, considering also different levels of the lake. They take the highest level of water possible and then measure 50 meters. And below those 50 meters, that's the riparian zone. Another thing REMA did is banning all activities in the riparian zone except tree planting. Uh, this land was mostly used for agriculture before the restoration of the riparian zone, also pastoralism. But REMA said no activities is needed in this place because this is the public land, not people's land. Another thing REMA did is to plant trees to assist the restoration process of the riparian zone. And this research had the main objective of assessing the role of the riparian zone in climate change resilience. Specifically, I assessed the status of the riparian zone ecosystem, mainly focusing on plant species composition, land use, and percentage of eroded soil. Another thing is to assess perception of local communities about the role of the riparian zone in climate change resilience and their livelihood. And the third one was to assess perceptions of local communities about the protection and the management of riparian zone. And about the methodology, I used transect sampling. Uh, I made free transect in the riparian zone, and I walked 200 meters and made a cycle of 5 meters radius. And in that cycle, I counted how many trees are there, which species are there. And also I used the focus group discussion. I did a focus group discussion with three different groups, and each group was made up by 7 people. And I also used the questionnaire to survey about the land use using the GPS. I took my handheld GPS and I was touring the riparian zone and took a GPS point when I start, for example, a cropland, and when I end the cropland, I took another coordinate, then another area I crossed, I marked it, for example, pastoralism, if I crossed to that land, and then at the end, I did the statistics to know what's the size of the riparian zone is used for agriculture and what the size of the riparian zone is used for only restoration activities, which means no human activities, and which size of the riparian zone is used for pastures. And this is the graph. At the time of this research, some people were still using the riparian zone. That's why about 50% at that time was still under agriculture. And those people who did agriculture did that illegally because it is not allowed now to enter the riparian zone to cultivate or do something else. Uh, of course, some people obeyed the law and left the riparian zone, but other people stayed cultivating in the riparian zone, which is against the law. And I was curious to know about what the community think about ecosystem services provided by the riparian zone in relation especially to climate change resilience. And uh, most of them, about 60%, mentioned spawning area for fishes, wind control, erosion control. It's surprising that uh, about 60% knows that when grasses or plants are in the riparian zone, that's the best thing for the fishes because they know fishes can't breathe in another area except that area which has different grasses and the shade. And they know if we destroy these spawning habitats, fishes can decrease. And about other roles, they mentioned the flood control, drought reduction and the shade, clean air, also animal habitat. Also, they said it reduces water pollution, and other people around 5% told me it prevents depression of water in the lake, and others said it buffers wildlife animals. When they come to eat our crops, they don't come to our land, they stay in the riparian zone grazing there, and that's the best thing uh, the riparian zone can do. And about preventing the lake to run out of water or water depression in the lake, they know cultivating the riparian zone reduces water. They said uh, they were putting in this sense um, isuka yirukana amazi, or the who, or that material used in cultivating uh, push away water, which means the more you cultivate, the more water is going to go further from the original edge. And when I asked them about direct benefits of the riparian zone to the community, uh, about 42-43% said there is no direct benefits, and the others said future benefits, because then they know when I have these trees in the riparian zone and they grow, I can go there to cut it, or I can go there to look for some other non-timber forest products, and that can benefit me, but not now. And other people said the only way the riparian zone can be useful to us is to cultivate in it. And other people said the water in the lake increases, and that is good for us. And other people said it can provide the fruits when those trees are mature. Also, riparian spawning area for fishes, especially for those fishes. They mostly like the riparian zone to be there, because they know if the riparian zone is well managed, fishes will increase. And also, other people were saying, oh, the riparian zone is good because they gave us incentives to protect it. And those incentives are in terms of water tank. REMA provided the water tank to some people who had the land in the riparian zone, and those people who received them are saying that's a great thing. And other people said that's a buffer zone for animals in the lake. As I said before, of course, some things are repeating themselves, but uh, the community member could mention something and say it's a direct benefit for me, and also it can help me be more resilient in climate on the climate change risks. And when I asked them why first of all, I asked them, would you like to protect the riparian zone? And if the person says yes, I said, why would you like to protect the riparian zone? And about 25% said that's to protect the biodiversity. And other people says, oh, it's mandatory. There is no other choice because Lema said we should protect this land and nothing else should be conducted there. And other people protect the riparian zone because they know it's the buffer zone for animals in the lake. And other people around 10-12% said it increases fish stock in the lake, also fruits, clean air, water increase in the lake, erosion control to attract land, pollution control, and spawning area for fishes. I have an interesting thing to talk about attracting the land. They know when trees are going facing the sky, as they go up, they will go and attract the rain, which means the longer the tree is, the more the ability to attract the rain. Yeah, which is, of course, different to science, but that's how the community understands it. Uh, Also, I asked them if they are satisfied with the current management practices of the riparian zone or if they prefer changes in the riparian zone management. And of course, not surprising, around 30% said we wanted to go back in the riparian zone to cultivate. Other people said we want to plant trees in the riparian zone. Maybe REMA can help us uh, plant those fruit trees in abundance so we get food to eat. And other people said we want the riparian zone protection measures to be reinforced. Other people said, I want the riparian zones to be fenced. And other people said, I need incentives. Incentives is like they were saying, if REMA give us an alternative of our land, we would be happy to leave the land. That one of incentives they mentioned. Another thing, plant more trees. They want just more trees. Actually, there is a portion of people who understands that the riparian zone should be protected and law enforced, so it is very managed. And of course, other people wants to go back in the riparian zone to cultivate. Uh, from those lizards, as we saw in the lizards, the most abundant trees are exotic species, and theoretically, particular grasses and shrubs or tree species should compose the riparian zone with different zonation in the riparian zone itself. Uh, for example, saying zone 1 should be composed by native grasses, followed by another zone of native plant species, followed by another row of trees which are not native but maybe naturalized or which are not harmful to the environment. Also, what I realized in the when analyzing data is that the existing vegetation may be contributing to erosion control. Vegetation from agriculture and vegetation from the activities Lema did by planting different trees or just native grasses there, all of those might be contributing to the erosion control because I saw very little erosion in the riparian zone, and that might be because of already existing vegetation in the riparian zone. Another thing is that it will be still not easy to convince the local people to leave the riparian zone fully when they don't understand direct benefits from the riparian zone. Of course, also they should understand that the riparian zone is not for only one community, it's for many people beyond the one community itself. And that can go, of course, education about that to explain that riparian zone is very beneficial to more people than just one community can go with showing them direct benefits from the riparian zone. And also, as showed by Fielding et al. 2005, uh, belief about the benefits of the riparian zone management are critical for influencing the adoption of the riparian zone management measures. Another thing I can add is that people in the community just need to believe that there are benefits which are derived from the riparian zone protection. Uh, when also analyzing data, I realized that people, of course, wants to protect the riparian zone because it contributes to biodiversity protection, and that can be linked to ethical standard of each person because we were all born ethical and feeling some sense of responsibility to the community and also sense of responsibility to the environment, which may induce someone to think it's better to protect this land for biodiversity, and that also can be of intrinsic values for each one of the people who may think it's beneficial to protect biodiversity. And this may be not influenced by external pressure, but from within. And other people are willing to protect the wetland because it is a law, and those may be motivated by the desire to comply or desire to avoid the punishment. Also, about agriculture in the riparian zone, research shows that the land in the riparian zone is very fertile and productive, and of course, with easy access to water as it is close to water. And also, the poverty in the area is very high because I read from the project document which was developed before this project, I realized that the average income per person in the community is 500 Rwandan francs per day, which is very low, and also water scarcity in the area. And all of those factors may be contributing to inducing people to continue cultivating in the riparian zone. Uh, to conclude, the riparian zone is improving people's livelihoods, but not fully because, of course, trees planted by REMA are still very young. Not, they did not start to yield benefits to the local community. Also, the community which were cultivating the riparian zone, uh, part of them may not be fully satisfied because they only know this is the lemur's land and it's for the benefits of all of us. But me personally, I don't realize enough benefits. And also about the climate change resilience, we saw a lot from the community. They mentioned that ecosystem services from the riparian zone are erosion control, flood regulation, wind break, and habitat provision, which is in line with the literature about the role of the riparian zone, which is good that they know about that. And also, we can wonder if the riparian zone, if the community is willing to comply with the riparian zone management measures. Uh, to this question, yes, but not in one day. It is a process because behavior change takes some time and it requires different factors like trainings someone received and awareness raising activities conducted in the area, also alternatives people have because it is very easy to say do this rather than saying don't do this. If you say this is the alternative, that will be easier for the community to understand that they should leave the riparian zone. But as time comes and more effort invested, they will understand. Recommendation, I recommend to employ adaptive and participatory measures in the riparian zone management, especially asking them what do you need, which tree can be planted. If you want this grass, which kind of species. Also, I'd recommend to focus on fruit trees for maybe the extension of the eBay project by REMA or other projects coming. They can focus on fruit trees and also focus on indigenous trees as mentioned by the community. And the recommendation for the future research is to test the effectiveness of different species to the riparian zone protection, because I am sure that different tree species perform differently in the riparian zone depending on which species it is. Thank you very much for your kind attention, and also I thank REMA for funding this research. Also, I thank the Center of Excellence in Biodiversity and Natural Resource Management, because it's through its collaboration with REMA that I have got this grant to do this research. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you, Vinod. Thanks so much. It was really interesting. And I'm going to go now to any questions in the chat. And also, please feel free to raise your hand, and then you can unmute and ask your question directly to Vinod. So, yeah, Hillary was asking if the name is Wakabili. And I think that is the same lake. Is that correct, Vinod?
I don't understand the question well. Could you please repeat?
See, why don't you can look in the chat. Yeah, she's just asking what it's named on in Google Maps. And there's another. Yeah.
Yeah, Lake Kibare or Rwakibare. Yeah, the local community use both names interchangeably, Kibare and Rwakibare, and you can look for Kibare first and see what comes. I hope that's the official name.
Okay, and then Jean de Dieu has a question. He's been to Karehe district in certain riparian zones. He heard local communities complaining that riparian zone holds some aggressive animal species that destroy their crops, and sometime they are attacked. So his question is, how can we convince people in these communities about riparian zone services since they have been experiencing negative effects? That's a really great question, because I remember when I visited you in the field, Vena, we saw the paths where the hippos were coming in and out. And yeah, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that. It's a great question, Jean de Dieu. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. That's a serious issue in the area, because crop breeding is common there, and there is special guarantee fund from RDB, and RDB collaborated with the Akagera National Park to compensate damage from the local people. But the question, which is the problem, which is still there, is the long time it takes to be compensated. And another issue is the amount of the money they give you, because they still rely on the old law, which sets low prices. For example, if it's a hectare of beans, they are not going to value your beans according to the current value of beans, but the value of 2010 when the law was established, and this is a serious issue, but uh, maybe advocacy is needed to update the law and also make sure that the process of compensating local community is not taking long. Yeah.
Muted. Sorry. Thank you. Didn't realize I was muted. There's some hands up, and I want to get to one other question that came in before the hands up from Blaze. Hi, Blaze. I think you're in Germany. Is that right? And he's asking, he was surprised to see that Venat found only one invasive species in the riparian zone where you sampled. Does your field area cover both disturbed and intact riparian zone? And if yes, how is it proportional? He said he would have expected more invasive species in the disturbed areas.
Oh, thank you very much for a good question, Brace. Yes, we covered both the disturbed area and the intact area, but the disturbed area is mostly composed by agricultural activities. It was agriculture which is taking place there, and no more invasive species. Actually, only one, and it's one in 57 species. Uh, yeah, if I can be specific about the proportion. Or do you mean also the proportion in disturbed areas versus undisturbed areas?
Yeah, I
Uh,
think that's what he means. Yeah.
yeah, I didn't calculate that. I didn't aggregate disturbed area and undisturbed area during data analysis, but it would be very great to do that.
Yeah, thank you. Good question. All right, so I think there were some hands up. I'm gonna try to find. So I saw Franklin, you have your hand up, and then we'll go to Heminigild. So go ahead, Franklin. Welcome.
Thank you, Professor, and my thanks to Mr. Vena for his great presentation. It's a really, really good, Mr. Vena. So, I would like to know about two things. First, I would like to know during your focus group discussion, when you did the research, did you manage to know what were the process of getting land from people to REMA, as you said? Because this is very important. Which was a process, and according to the result on the chat bar, you said until now, when you did the result, around 70% of the land is using as agriculture in riparian zone. So this is really great difficult because this can induce the effort made by REMA to be converted in zero. So I'd like to know, did you get any time when you make focus group discussion to discuss with local community what were the process of REMA get the riparian zone, because it was used before REMA get it? Thank you.
Yeah, good question. Yes, I have talked to the community about that during the focus group discussion. They told me that Lema came and said this is the land for the government, and they said that during the community meeting they gathered all people and say from now on we are going to do the riparian zone restoration, and you are required to leave the land because the law says no other activity should take place in the riparian zone except conservation activities. And from that, people were supposed to leave the land. That's how the process went. And REMA started planting trees in the riparian zone. And about your second question, you asked about most of the riparian zone being still used for agriculture. Can you please repeat?
That is my fear, because you said you made focus group discussions and you explained us what REMA did to local communities. But when you did your research, if we consider Chatbar, around 70% of riparian zone is used as agriculture. So maybe it is a problem. It means that the local community did not accept what REMA took the land for them, or what? Can you give us an overview why until now riparian zone is used as agriculture instead of using as a restoration?
Yes, thank you very much. And just to make a little comment on numbers, it's about 50%, not 70%. And this is because of non-compliance. Whether you accept or not, you had to leave the riparian zone. No, nothing you can do as a local community to change things, because if the law says you should do this, the community must obey. But some people are resisting. It's actually the resistance of some people, and that's why they are still going there for cultivating. And maybe also the consistency of local readers and REMA itself is, I mean, they are not consistent over the years, because sometimes they may come and say, don't do this, and say, we'll punish you. And when someone goes back to cultivate and he or she harvests something, other people says, oh, yeah, maybe I can try that as well. And that the other person goes there. I'm saying this because some people didn't do that at the time I did research.
Okay,
and when I went back,
Okay.
the research ends. Do you want to say something, Dave?
Yeah.
Just trying to move along because we have 15 more minutes and we still have a couple of other questions. And I see, So did you finish answering?
Yeah, to conclude, when someone does something and see there is nothing wrong or nothing bad happened to him or her, other people may be influenced to do the same. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. I hope that answered your question, Franklin.
Yeah, thank you, Professor. That is a very deep discussion. We can't make it on this chat room, but it is the same problem we have in Kauzibiega National Park. Maybe we will discuss further with Mr. Vena and you to give us, because we have the same problem around Kauzibiega National Park. So maybe with your advice, we will know something. Thank you, Professor.
Yeah, that's interesting. I really appreciate having these comparisons. So let's go to Hermenegild and then Leonce. Hermenegild, welcome.
Thank you, Prof. And thank you, Vena, for this amazing presentation.
Hermenegild, we can't hear you. Can anybody hear him? Is it just me or what?
I don't hear him as well.
Yeah, sorry, Hermenegild, maybe you can test your microphone or you can type your question in the chat. And while we're waiting for you to sort it out, we may move to Leonce and then we'll come back to you. Thank you. So Leonce, welcome.
Thank you, Prof. And thank you for Vena for the good presentation. From the people's response and from the research conclusion, it's clear that the riparian zone has not yet started producing direct benefit to the community. Of course, it depends on how different people understand the direct benefit. It may be in terms of compensation, incentives, or the right to exploit the riparian zone. So I want to know if Vena has managed to talk with REMA about what they are thinking to do to have a riparian zone that is contributing to people's livelihood. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Yeah, go ahead, Vinod.
Yeah, sorry, on my side it was cutting off, and I didn't hear like the last two sentences he
So
said.
I just want to know if you have tried to talk with REMA and know what they are planning to do to have a riparian zone which is contributing to the people's livelihood. Because as long as
Yes.
oh, good.
Yeah, I understand your question now. Yes, that would be very interesting, and it's a great suggestion. I can talk with Rema to see what they think they can do to improve more livelihood from the riparian zone, because the riparian is the local community think if we can access the riparian zone, that's when we can improve our livelihood. And of course, that's a good question I can ask Rema.
Yes, that was the sense of my question, because although we have seen that, yeah, the riparian zone contains many tree species, and some of those tree species can be used by the community for different activities like handcrafting, different local products that can be sold. So I want to know if, like, in the future, the REMA would allow some people to have access, like, to bamboo. They can use them for producing, like, a basket. Of course, they should be arranged. They should be organized in cooperatives, the same way like national parks are doing, to have the people who benefiting from the existence of national park. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's a great suggestion.
Yeah, that is, I think we need to think about that in terms of like a policy brief related to all the different findings we have from these studies on riparian zones and ecosystem-based adaptations and services. So thanks for that comment, Leonce. Jimena Gil, do you want to try again? Yeah, Jimena Gil, do you want to put your question in the chat? Yeah, it's, he's muted right now. So unless he can put his question, type it into the chat, I don't know that we'll be able to get to the question or the comment. So does anybody else have any questions or comments for Vinod? Oh, good, VNA. Yes, welcome, VNA.
Thank you so much, Prof. Kaplan. Thank you so much, Vena, for your good presentation. And hi to everyone. I want just to comment on a few things. As Vena said, what he said is actually correct. When he did his research around Lake Kibare, there was still some resistance from the people actually it is provided by law that the buffer zone of the lake, of the river, or of the wetlands are used either when you have a special permission or are used for conservation of the biodiversity and other ecosystem services. So today, I think there's more encroachment in the buffer zone of Lake Kibare has been reduced, and actually it's more than 50% now of the land that is not being encroached. And as he said, we can see some indirect benefits of erosion control, flood control, and habitats. The direct benefit is actually not yet seen because, as he mentioned, trees are still small. And again, as he mentioned, behavior change is a process and it takes time. So there were several awareness raising meetings and trainings with the local communities. And I can say that gradually they are complying with the law that the buffer zone is saved for protection of Lake Kibare and the buffer zone. But also I want to point that currently recently REMA conducted a study on the wise use of the buffer zone. So there is a study which was conducted recently by REMA, and I think even now or anyone can come to REMA and ask for a copy of that study. They want to see, as Leonce said, or even Vena proposed, maybe not REMA, but the country, we have several lakes, rivers, and wetlands, and we are trying to see how these buffer zones can be used without affecting the ecosystems around those buffer zones of the river, of the lake, and the wetlands. As we know, or in Rwanda, we are one of the densely populated country, and land is very limited, very small. People have very small pieces of land. So there's a study that is trying to see how these lands can be used without affecting the ecosystem in that area. Also, I think Leonce said how the bamboo that have been planted around the rivers, lakes, and wetlands in Rwanda can be used. I think currently